Welcome. Today we'll be talking about maximizing value, how Microsoft 365 G5 E5 eliminates costly third-party software. We'll explore how organizations can slash third-party software costs by more than 50% while enhancing productivity with the advanced features and capabilities of the Microsoft 365 G5 E5 license. We'll cut through the noise and show you exactly which third-party software can be eliminated across 5 key enterprise technology categories where the G5 license offers significant advances over the G3 license. And I say G just for ease of use. I'm going to slip that back and forth. G, E3, G3, same thing, just different environments, right? Including identity management, cybersecurity, telephony and meetings, advanced analytics and compliance, and e-discovery. With me today is Guy Cavallo, who is an award-winning leader with a distinguished career in both the public and private sectors. He's an extensive track record as a technology transformation leader in government organizations, driven by his passion for improving the delivery of government services through innovative technologies. Notably, at the end of 2024, Guy was awarded the Distinguished Presidential Rank Award, the highest civilian government award, and was the only federal CIO to receive this recognition. Also with me is Demetrius Rogers, who brings over 25 years of experience of information technology, including C-suite leadership roles in both private sector and state government. Before joining Planet, he made a significant contributions as Deputy Chief Operating Officer at the Virginia Information Technologies Agency, or VITA, where he established a cloud adoption framework and policies that laid the groundwork for Virginia's innovative cloud strategy. His experience extends to delivering IT as a service, leveraging his extensive knowledge to support state and local leaders. For more information about today's program, make sure you check out the blog on this topic that was posted earlier this week. We also included some useful links at the end of the presentation, so let's get started. On the agenda today, we'll talk about exploring major features of the E3, G3, and E5, G5, and E3 and G3 licenses. We'll then talk about third-party alternatives to these licenses, talk about some cost reduction through some software consolidation and understanding license costs and benefits. And of course, we'll save some time for questions. I know we got one in advance, but we will also want to hear about you and your experiences with these products. So if you have some questions, please make sure you ask them at that time. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Guy and Demetrius. Thanks for joining us, guys.
All right, thank you, Ken, and nice to get to share a lot of experience with all of you. I asked Demetrius to join me so that on my side, I've been a city IT director of the city of Charlotte. I've also been a federal CIO and a federal deputy CIO, and then with Demetrius at the state level, you have people who have had to spend 10, 20 years trying to make the most out of their IT budgets. And I wanted to put this presentation together to help share that knowledge with you. But just as a quick refresher, and you have to do this because Microsoft keeps adding more and more things to the M365 suite. Basically with the G3 license, you get your Office applications, Exchange and SharePoint, Online, Teams, Intune. Start getting into lower levels of identity management with the Entra ID P1. Same thing with cybersecurity with the P1 level of Defender, and minimal e-discovery and your Windows license. So again, just put this up as a refresher that if you blank, you may have missed that Microsoft added something else to this. The next slide we're going to go to is just see breaking them into those 5 categories that Ken highlighted. What are the features that you pick up with the G5? And I'm going to call it the G5 most of the time. But again, as Ken said, it's just which environment you're in. The identity management, again, you now move up to Entra ID level P2 beyond P1, and you also get the Defender for identity. Again, I know the teams had sessions on all of these. I just wanted to highlight what's there, but you basically get enhanced identity management and threat protection. Then on the cybersecurity side, you pick up the P2 level of Defender, you get Cloud App, Endpoint P2, Safe Documents, AppGuard. Again, additional features that protect your email and documents and give you advanced endpoint protection, and then provides that protection for the Cloud Apps part of the M365 suite. All right, so those are the first two categories. Next slide, we'll show the remaining three. Again, we just developed these categories just to try to summarize all the many differences that Microsoft puts into it. Telephony and meetings. So you pick up the Teams PBX and Teams calling capability, and I'll show you how you cost that in the future. Again, so it allows you to consolidate your telephony and video conferencing into a single solution. For advanced analytics and dashboards, you pick up Power BI Pro for all users. And again, Power BI Pro for several years now has been the leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for business intelligence platforms. While Tableau gets all the advertising and everything, Power BI Pro has been ranked higher by Gartner in the Magic Quadrant for at least the last 3 years, if not a little bit longer. And then the last area is compliance and e-discovery. Again, needing to pick up with insider risk management, more enhanced e-discovery, and information protection and governance, allowing you to really conduct those enterprise document searches and retrievals that you need to do for either legal cases or audit findings. And then, working with Microsoft Purview and other document management, really taking care of what types of documents do you have and can they be shared or should they be restricted on who can see them. So again, that's a short summary of what's different when you go from a G3 to the G5 license. You can see it's quite a bit of different functions. And in my experience, many people that have the G5 license do not turn all of these features on. And today we're going to show you what the cost of that difference would be.
Yeah. And I just want to point out two things. So like, I know some people that may be familiar with licensing may know that there's e-discovery and E3 as well, but this is the premium e-discovery where you get to do a lot more fine tuning of the discovery cases before you actually pull them down. So if you've used the basic e-discovery, you basically pull everything down and you can't clean up anything before you do it. This allows you to do like redaction and a lot better cleanup and pull down a smaller data set. So that's huge. And then on the audit, you get the premium audit, which actually allows you to save up to, I think, 365 days of logs versus 90 in the E3. So big differences there on those two items right there I want to point out.
No, thanks for adding that, Ken. And I can tell you, working with my my general counsel, the basic e-discovery, they basically get it done and they have to manually go through everything. And so they hated that. And so what Ken highlighted is very important. It's not just a little improvement, it's a major step.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to our first poll question. We do have a question in the chat too as well, but let's get the poll question up and ready to go, and then we'll answer the question in the chat here. So which 365 license version does the majority of your organization own? I'm just kind of curious how you're licensed today. This is for like the majority of your users. So if you have like a couple E5s just for things like PIM or something, that's not what we're talking about here. We're like the majority of your users, how are they how are they licensed today is kind of what we're looking for. All right. So we had a question. Do you want to, Guy and Demetrius, do you want to handle all the questions during the question and answer period, or do you want to do them on the fly? It's up to you.
We can do it either.
Yeah, I'd rather hold them to the end to make sure.
Okay, let's hold them to the end.
To go through the licensing costs.
And I may answer some of them in the chat that way if there's.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Demetrius.
And we'll go over the poll results in a little bit too as well. All right, so let's move it on. We've got, oops, did I go too far? There we go. Sorry. Went too fast. There you go. Go ahead, Guy.
Okay, so just so everybody knows, I have been doing this conversion from G3 to G5 and those three major jobs I highlighted by my gut. I just knew it was a good deal. But what I've done at Planet is I've had the time and I went through all the GSA contract schedules. So again, those of you that aren't federal buyers, instead of a list price, this is the negotiated price that the vendor has agreed to put on their, on their to allow federal agencies and state and local governments to buy off of that. So I just wanted you to know all the pricing you're going to see. It's all been done at the federal government GSA pricing level, so it's a common playing field for this. So just starting off the bat, I also went with 1,000 users as the easiest way to do these comparisons. Again, if you're in a smaller organization, you can take a percentage of that, or if you're in a bigger organization, you could multiply these numbers. But the G3 federal pricing is for 1,000 users is about $409,800. If you bought the G5 licenses instead, that's $644.40. So you're looking at the cost difference here is $234,240 with that. So that's just the straight difference between a G3 license buy and a G5 license buy. A little bit later, you're going to see one again the advantages of Teams calling. One thing that you need to do if you're going to go to the G5 and implement Teams calling is that you get the PBX, the cloud PBX is part of that G5 license, but you have to buy minutes for each of the users. So what I've done at my last two agencies is we bought 120 Teams minutes for each user per month, just like a cell phone bill, you pay per month. And also, well, I guess the cell phone companies are getting away from it, but those minutes are pooled. So it would be 120 Teams minutes times 1,000 that everyone would get to share. And those minutes are only used when you call an external number. It's not used when I make a internal call from one person to the other. So that's 77,000. So when you add in the cost difference of the G5 license and those Teams minutes, the gap between the G3 and the G5 with the Teams minutes is $311,000. I wanted you to see that up front as I start getting into the third-party pricing differences. All right, next one. The other thing, and before I even get into licensing, this is something I've had to deal with throughout my career. When you go with multiple products or the best of breed approach, the diagram on the right is really what I suffered in my life. We've got those 5 categories and different pools that don't align perfectly with each other. There are always overlaps, or there are gaps, or there are things that you have to do to tune them down so that they can coexist with each other. And also you end up having more than one of them, versus on the left-hand side, we know with the G5 license, you get everything integrated, no gaps between the products. They all are working together, and you don't have to try to put the puzzle together like I had to do on the right-hand side. All right, next one. So to do this study, I worked with both people in cybersecurity that I've worked with for years and others in just my own experience. And again, from a federal government perspective, DHS and CISA have recommended different security and identity management products over time. But what I've done here is list some of the most common ones that would have been purchased within an agency. For privileged ID management, so not just your everyday users, but who are your super users? CyberArk, Beyond Trust, Okta are pretty typical products that are bought. And then doing your identity protection, Okta again, SailPoint's purchase a lot, CrowdStrike jumps in, Oracle jumps in, IBM. And then your ID lifecycle management, again, some of these products, I listed them for each function, so it might be a repeat. We pick up ForgeRock and again, Oracle Identity Governance. When we start moving to those capabilities that the G5 added in cybersecurity for email protection, people commonly use ForcePoint, Abnormal, or Proofpoint. You need a cloud apps security broker, Netscope, Splunk, Cloudflare, Palo Alto, Wiz are all common alternative applications. Your identity endpoint protection, Cisco, Endpoint, Fortinet, CrowdStrike, Falcon, FireEye, Symantec are all pretty popular. And then for insider risk management, again, you get Proofpoint, Insider Threat Management, Varonis Data Security, again, Splunk and Cisco Behavior Analysis, and ForcePoint Insider Threat Solutions. I may not have every product that you have in your organization, but again, these would be very typical. And when I went into new organizations, I usually had a bunch of these running in the enterprise. So those are the first two categories. Let's take a look at the next categories. So much shorter list here, but doesn't mean that you don't spend a lot of money with it. So your telephony and meeting solution, Zoom, Google Meet, Cisco WebEx, AT&T Verizon, Adobe Connects, GoToMeetings. I can tell you when I went into my last federal agency, we were running 6 of these products across the enterprise. Not everybody had every license, so it was even worse in that you couldn't talk between one division and another. But when I got there, there were 6 incompatible competing solutions in the enterprise. For the advanced analytics, I mentioned Tableau earlier, but Click, Cognos, and Business Objects are, again, pretty typical inside a organization, especially somebody that's been doing BI since the early 2000s, where they probably started with Cognos and Business Objects. And then for compliance, the e-discovery and auditing capability, Veritas, Relativity One, OpenText, Evanlaw are very popular, along with File for Information Protection, File Cloud, Adobe Document Cloud are common. So that's a mouthful of products. I can tell you as a CIO or an IT executive responsible for an enterprise, those were never brought to me as one. I never had an easy side by side of, Guy, here's the 12 different products that we're using and they cost this much, or here's your E5 license and it costs this much, because the contracts ran different time periods, or were paid for out of different budgets or different pots of money. It's not that easy to be able to say, whoa, how much did I spend here versus there? So what you're going to see in the next section is that I went through and picked what I thought was the most common or fairly frequently used products. And then again, going to their GSA pricing schedule, what would it cost for 1,000 users a year to license those products? Again, this doesn't mean that these are the only things that they're using or that this is what Planet would recommend you use instead of the G5. It just shows you a comparison of where these third-party prices start really adding up. So in identity management, CyberArk comes in at about 11,900 and Okta comes in at 3,560. When we go to cybersecurity and trying to equal all those additional features as Defender and safe documents, you could look at CrowdStrike, Falcon, and Netscope coming in at 4,740 and 53,200. And then telephones. This is a place where I was able to save my organizations millions of dollars by not just continuing on with the phone systems that you inherited. So I'm a big fan of the Cloud PBX and Teams phone. When we had people working at home during COVID, I didn't have to worry where the PBX was. It was in Microsoft's cloud. They could connect and get their phone number at home just as easy as they could in the office. So again, you have to buy the minutes. So I take the G5, add the 77,400. And if I had a traditional Cisco WebEx implementation, the Collaboration Flex plan, about 241,800. The PSTN service to connect to it, 18,520. And then if I had Zoom meetings too, about 267,590. Now, I know some of you might say, well, Guy, I don't need to buy Zoom meetings if I'm using Teams. I can tell you, working on the Federal CIO Council, that it was not unusual to have an agency have multiple products. So it's rare that you only line up one. But again, if you went in these other directions, these are the prices that you would pay. All right, let's go to the next one.
It's great seeing this, because I know I went into one agency, state agency once, that had over 50 products to cover these suites. And it was eye-opening to see what they were paying.
Yeah, it's easier just to keep renewing licenses than
Yeah.
taking the time to do the study that we put together to help you with this. So so definitely for you to see the bottom line on this slide, it's well worth looking at the cost. So again, with the G5 license, you get Power BI Pro. The equivalent version of Tableau for that is Tableau Explorer. That costs almost $500,000 to get those same users a license.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say about that, I've spent a lot of time the last 20 years in business intelligence and dashboarding. And one of the things I found was very difficult in an organization was to only give BI and dashboards to some users because it was so expensive. And when you look at a product like Tableau, you have to make that choice. Should I buy Sally a license or does Joe get the license? But with the G5 license, you have everybody has Power BI Pro. So you don't have the haves and the have-nots. And that's really important.
One other thing there too is I know when I ran Tableau for the state of North Carolina, everything was on premise. So we had all the server cost as well. I don't think you're not even talking about that here,
No.
right?
Yeah, this is just a license.
Right.
And then the last category, Veritas eDiscovery is fairly common on doing that eDiscovery work. So that comes in at 117,000. So when you add up again, just the licenses and cost, and again, these are all GSA pricing, it's 1,227,027. Oh, but don't forget, you still need to buy your G3 license because that doesn't give you the Office suite. So that's another 409,800. So those 1,000 users with these, again, this select group of third-party products comes in about 1.636 million.
All right. That's
And
a
you
big
may
cost.
not, but that's what you're spending.
Yeah. All right.
So now let's put everything together. So we take that 1,000,006 up top. I can tell you, I never went into an organization where I had enough staff to be able to put those puzzle pieces that I showed earlier together. A very common percentage of what it costs to support multiple licenses is 25% of license costs. So to do all 5 areas here would be another $410,000 either in additional contractor costs or in software maintenance costs or just third-party staffing. Again, you might say that number is too high, you've got enough people to do it. Okay, then just take it out. But if you added that in, those 1,000 users cost you over $2 million with the G3 and third-party and that technical support. Again, going back to what I showed you earlier, the G5 plus the calling minutes was 721K. So you're looking at a cost difference of $1.3 million for 1,000 users.
And
I'll
one other
say
thing I'd
that-
like, yeah, that's a huge difference. And the other thing is, I don't know if I'd want 120 minutes per user, to be honest with you, because I hardly ever do dial tone anymore now that I've got Teams.
Yeah.
So
Yep. I mean that I can tell you, Ken, at my agency where of course we had 3,500 users. Some of them were calling out to citizens every day, and others of us, like you mentioned, I never called out to a citizen. I called internally to another staff member, so that didn't use any of those minutes.
Yeah.
Yep. So you could cut that down too. But main thing I wanted to see, and Demetrius can chime in here with me. I was never presented with, Guy, do you want to spend $2 million or do you want to spend 721K? It was never presented to me in a nice bow that I could take the time and go, oh, well, I only want to spend 721K.
Yeah, I never got that luxury. The only other thing I'll add too is that even if you take out the people, you're still going to have on typical, I think on average, 15 to 20% of software maintenance costs on top of those licenses that are embedded in there. And you know, even if you have enough people, like Guy said, you still have to account for the software maintenance cost is going to be an annual cost.
That's a great point. The other thing is, I think the reason why this happens, right, is because everyone's cost buckets for budgeting is in different buckets, and no one
Right.
cross talks about how much money they're really spending for the total solution, right? So I think you can understand how this happens, right? Everyone just keeps renewing their contracts and don't look at the big picture to coordinate everything under one streamlined solution.
Yep, and Ken, going back to what I said earlier, I mean, we've all experienced this. And there was a time where the Office 365 suite was just the Office applications.
Right.
And so I would have needed to buy all of these third-party products to support it. But over time, as Microsoft added more and more capabilities, now I'm starting to do that overlap duplication if I just keep renewing what we had, unless you do this type of analysis.
Right. All right. Let's move on.
All right, so for people that like to see a bar chart of it, that's the difference you're looking at. And again, one thing I'm finding is that for entities that have purchased a G5 license, but really haven't turned on all those capabilities, they are being questioned on, why don't we just drop back to a G3? And again, if you drop back to a G3, and you were on a G5 already, you have to come up with a way to pay for all those functions that you just cut. And again, to me, the money difference is huge. Anytime I can save 50% of a budget cost over what I inherited, that gives me more money to do innovation, to do modernization on a flat budget. And at the federal government level right now, a lot of IT budgets are being slashed tremendously. Again, if I had multiple third-party products before I laid off staff or cut programs, the first thing I would do is try to get these third-party software licensing costs down. But there's more. There's one more place you can save coming up next. And again, I did this at 2 agencies, so I can tell you that it was a surprise, again, comparing a standard Cisco desktop phone from federal GSA pricing to a Polycom Teams phone. You can see it's over a $200 difference per phone. So if you happen to have something that's not Teams phones today, somewhere you're buying your desk phones or headsets or however your end users are communicating. But even here, I can save over $200 per desk by switching to Teams calling. And I can tell you at my former agency at SBA, we were paying over $900 for a Cisco phone. Wow. Compared to the $220 for a Teams phone per user. So my last slide will be, we add that cost in too. So if you do make that switch and you replace the third-party products with the G5 and you throw in the cost savings of not buying Cisco phones, you buy Teams phone, again, you're looking at a $1.6 million cost savings your first year. And then obviously you shouldn't need to buy Teams phones every year, so you drop back to the 1.4. But when you do this type of analysis and you really look at what is it costing me to run my enterprise, the G5 wins this cost battle. And I can tell you, my CFOs that I work with, when I told them I could cut my contract costs, I didn't have this level of detail, but I knew I could cut some of it. They said, yes, you can keep the funding if you stay within your budget, which allowed me to then fund new initiatives without asking for more money. I find financial people love that. They hate it when you come to them and say, my budget's short, I need more money because I didn't realize we had to spend $400K on new phones. So again, a lot of experience on this deck from both me and Demetrius that have done this for years. And like I said, with Microsoft adding so many capabilities to the G5 license, you may not have kept up with all the changes. Much better to have an integrated solution at a lower cost than trying to do a best of breed and having to integrate multiple third-party products. So last thing I will highlight is that my experience is that most people have some of that have a G5 license, have some of it turned on, but not all those 5 categories that you have. Planet has a lot of experience with enabling the G5 or the E5. So we can give you a custom proposal just to turn on the pieces you need. Or if you're on an E3 license now and you see the money savings that you can get, we can help you turn on everything. But we can give a very customized enablement work outline for you to help you turn on the features that you're currently not using.
All right, now we're at our second poll question, and we're kind of wrapping up here and we're going to have questions next. But we're kind of curious about what you've heard today and about what areas you'd be most interested in turning on next, or maybe all of them. So if we could just get this poll answers, they're all anonymous, by the way. So please feel free to take the poll, and obviously we'd love to talk about it a little bit more. So when you can, just go ahead and fill out the poll for us. All right, now I think it's question time. And I know we had a question in advance, and one of the questions we had is, will this session today address the G5 components at an individual level, such as the G5 security and security add-on or the compliance add-on? Guy or Demetrius, you want to handle that question?
Yeah, I can go first, and Demetrius can fix me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I mean, one thing I wanted to do in the pricing is show you what categories are available. So even if I had the G3 and I bought the security suite add-on and the compliance suite add-on, I'm still left with having to pay for telephony and business intelligence. And so when you add all that together and having to pay for your telephony meeting solution and business intelligence, the G5 is going to be much cheaper. And again, the advantage of you having this deck is that you'll be able to compare what you're spending when you get back and see which one of these make the most sense.
Yeah, I would concur with that statement, Guy. What I found is once you start piecemealing with the add-ons, you quickly will start to drown out the value statement that you and the positioning to your stakeholders in terms of being able to justify the added cost. It takes only a couple of add-ons to start exceeding the cost of just going for G5. So, you know, because you would probably likely not be able to get rid of those other products in those instances. So then that business conversation becomes a little bit more difficult. There was a question, Casey.
So before we get too far into the questions, I just wanted to quickly do a call out. We sent out a survey to everyone that's a member of the program. We're looking to gather feedback to continue to improve the program, make sure that we're investing in the areas that are important to you. So please take a look for that survey. If you didn't receive it or are having trouble finding it, please reach out to us. We would love to get your feedback. Just wanted to get that in before folks start dropping off during the questions section, and I'll turn it right back over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Casey.
We have some other questions in the chat. Can I address some of them?
Yeah, please go ahead and start with the USB device control capabilities. Yeah.
Yeah, we've already addressed that. If anybody hadn't read the chat, Defender E5 does have USB device control capabilities. There was another question around if the telephone is available on GCC High. I was going to defer to Guy because I last I saw it was not, but I don't know if there's been a change on that.
Yeah, I do not know that off the top of my head, but we can follow up with that. It's like, again, it's something that every week you can get a different progress on it.
Absolutely. So Mark, we will follow back up with you on that response to make sure we give you the most up-to-date answer in regards to that.
There was a question about e-discovery specifically and whether or not you needed to have an E5 for all the advanced features, and the answer is for each user, and the answer is yes. Unfortunately, if you're going to be doing e-discovery, you need to have it on Well, actually, I take that back. For e-discovery specifically, if you had some C-level people that had higher e-discovery rights, you could just put the e-discovery licenses on those. I mean, the E5s on those people. But unfortunately, for some of these other services like Defender for the Cloud, Defender for Office 365, and others, they're kind of, when you turn them on, they're on for the entire tenant. And while you can test them and scope them down to certain users to try that out, to be compliant with Microsoft licensing, if you're going to go into production with it and roll it out, you do need to have coverage on all users.
Yep. And there's
last
another
one's
question.
interesting from Damon. I like this question. I'd be curious to know if there are risks in considering when you put all your eggs in one basket, in this case, Microsoft. I'd love to hear your thoughts, guys.
All right, I'll give my 2 cents, and then we can have Demetrius give his. As someone who's been called to Capitol Hill to have to testify in front of Congress multiple times, what they care about is, am I protecting the agency and the data? They don't care whether it's one product or 50 products. So the first thing is, as a CIO or a former CIO, I have to come up with the best solution for the enterprise. I personally was not worried about putting all the eggs in the G5 basket versus these independent companies. And when we look at the major cybersecurity breaches that have occurred in the last couple of years, they've been the smaller cyber companies that have been breached, that have led to the enterprises being breached. And I have my faith in Microsoft's cybersecurity team. I've worked at Microsoft for over 9 years. I know the size of their cyber team dwarfed anything that I had in either the federal government or at the city of Charlotte. So to me, the most important thing is protecting your enterprise. And that's why I had no fear of going all in with Microsoft versus having to deal with a SolarWinds breach or several of the other breaches that have happened in the small to mid-sized cyber companies. I know, Demetrius, what's your take?
Yeah. And at one point, I would say, 10, 15 years ago, that would have been a larger concern than where we are today. I actually wrote a blog about this last year in terms of the efficiency gains that Microsoft has made in terms of taking into consideration the operational risk of having multiple products with different skill sets in the environment, as well as, outside of the whole cost perspective. I think that the integrated capabilities of Microsoft security suites, as well as having all the different tools available to you from an operational perspective, have reduced that risk. I think it's more of a play of how can I most effectively and efficiently manage this environment to achieve, the goals for the business. And I think that the conversation around, even though we tout defense in depth, that conversation, when you look into it, still is at play, especially with the advent of AI systems. It actually provides more benefit to have some of these products in place where you can see everything from a single pane of glass. So I don't have any issues being able to say, hey, I'm going to leverage the most of my investment with Microsoft, especially when most times I see people own these licenses already for some reason or another. They might have bought it for additional purpose, and it almost becomes unjustifiable from a CFO perspective to say, well, I need this because of this reason, even though you have that same capability elsewhere.
Yeah, there's just so many things I can think of. And then one thing like skilling, right? I mean, when you talk about 20 different products and you try to recruit people, that's a lot of understanding of how to use these products. And that's where these problems are going to happen, right? Because they're not configured correctly. You have 20 products with less integration and the signals aren't going all to one location. there's just so many things. Best of breed just is not the argument anymore. I don't think it's integrated signaling. It's unified interface of learning how to use one solution so that skilling and training is not an issue for recruitment and sustainability of your employees. There's just so many things that just go on and on. Plus, no one can match Microsoft's security budget that they have every year, the 5,000. I don't know how many people they have in security, but they outnumber the industry by far. All right. I think that's any other questions. Feel free to come off mute or put your questions in the chat window. Happy to answer any other questions that you all have. I think we've answered all the ones that were in the chat window. All right, let's go over the poll results while we got everybody on the phone here. So the first question was all about, what would the majority of your users, or what are they licensed as? And it looks like we had about 50% of each. Well, it was 38% each, but there are 5 and 5 people that responded to that. So I'd say half the users were currently on E5, G5, half your users were pretty much on E3, G3, and then we had about 2 users that were a mix of the combinations there, and then nobody was doing anything less than that. That was good to hear. And some folks didn't know for sure what they were using. The second poll was all about, what do you want to move forward with as far as looking at the G5, E5 suite, and looks like majority of users were looking at cybersecurity. No, that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, and identity management was second, as well as compliance. So all the security items definitely at the top of the list. Analytics, I thought would have been a little bit higher. And obviously telephony was about 14%. So definitely the security products were definitely the highest in the answer. Any thoughts or comments, Demetrius or Guy, on those survey results?
No, that definitely is, like I said, I think anyone that's in a IT leadership role most likely wants to keep their job. So, giving people Power BI is a nice to have, where protecting the identity and cybersecurity is I get to keep my job another day till tomorrow. So no, and that's an area where, with today's AI-based cyber attacks, people really need to be, I would say that the attacker's ability is 1,000 times stronger now than it was 2 years ago because of their ability to use AI. So yeah, definitely you want to invest in that.
Okay.
And Ken, I also got a chance to use Copilot and ask Mark's question about his Teams calling supported in the GCC high cloud. And the answer is yes, but with a caveat. So we're in a civilian federal agency. I was able to use the Teams Cloud PBX in the GCC high cloud. That is one of the things you're not allowed to use. You're required to use a direct routing through a approved PSTN VoIP provider. So it's a yes, but it's a different form of using Teams calling than what I had shown.
Right. So you're probably going to be using your own SIP gateway and that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha. But for apples to apples comparison, I guess that was a good how you did it, just to get people started in the conversation.
Yes.
Hey,
Sure.
Ken, this is Damon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Damon, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I was starting to type this, but then I lost some steam. Just to follow up with something that was said earlier about you need to have all your users on G5 or E5 to take advantage of some of the stuff that we're talking about. I just wanted to broaden that question just a little bit, because we also have some F1 and F3 licenses. Does that even apply to that kind of license? Like you have to convert those to G5?
There's add-ons for those F1 licenses for security add-on.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're going to do eDiscovery or use those features like Defender for 365 or anything like that, you'd have to have the F5 security add-on for those kind of folks.
And that would be the thing that would get us in compliance, it sounds
Correct.
like. True.
Right.
Yeah. If you ever were audited by Microsoft, they'd want to know that those people were covered. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions? Feel free to come off mute. All right, we'll move on. So this slide represents 4 workshops out of our You Already Own It program, which I'm sure you're all aware of our You Already Own It program, right? It's our free, no cost, no sales program that we offer here at Microsoft for investing in our relationship with our customers. These are just 4 of the cloud strategy sessions that we offer. The first one is a licensing review. This is a basic licensing review on optimizing your licenses that you have. The goal is to review and educate your user or you on the current licensing you have in your tenant. Many folks just don't know what's all included in the licenses that they own, and then provide some general recommended actions to maximize your current licensing. Make sure you're taking use of all the features and functionality of them. Second one is Azure rationalization. It dives into analyzing current Azure consumption to identify cost-saving opportunities and improve service adoption. So if you've got some Azure workloads running in the Azure environment and you're looking at ways to save some cost, this is a great conversation to have. Accelerate M365 adoption emphasizes assessing user readiness and implementing strategies to boost end user engagement and productivity with Microsoft 365 tools. So if you're new to 365 and you're trying to figure out how to get better adoption, great strategy session to have that. And then finally, our cloud roadmap and planning session uses cloud maturity models based on 10 areas to evaluate the current state, prioritize initiatives, and provide actionable recommendations for future cloud development. We use like a 1 to 500 maturity level on this to give you some feedback on where you're at. So these are just some of the 4 of the about 20 different sessions that we have, workshops that are one-on-one, no cost, no sales. We'd love to have with you to carry on this conversation. I'll turn this back over to Guy or to Demetrius to have this next conversation about a more in-depth licensing review session that we do.
Thank you, Ken. So, as Ken mentioned too, we have the free our You Already Own It licensing review, and as you can see, that's where we actually go in and review your licensing and then make recommended actions. But then the next question is, okay, what about the rest of my environment? How should I address those? So, and then, what do I need to provide to my leadership, or what's my roadmap? How do I actually get to implement these things? And so we actually have a Microsoft licensing optimization engagement that's a paid engagement that will help you move from just having knowledge of your M365 licensing and recommended actions for that, but also being able to help you outside of that, including your Azure, your Dynamics, your Power Platform, give you an entitlement summary that you can share with your team in terms of everything you have access to. Also, having a great understanding of where you have redundancy in your environment. And then, what you can do to align those capabilities based on, the findings of that engagement, and then give you an optimization roadmap. So it actually takes you from just general knowledge to an action-oriented posture about saying, okay, I know now I want to do something about it. And so I also need to understand where the rest of my Microsoft licenses stand and what we need to do there. So this engagement provides a lot of value for those folks outside of the general M365 license review that we include in the You Already Own It session.
Yeah. Thanks, Demetrius. So if you're looking for making the business case to your executive management about why it makes sense, this is a great engagement to utilize to make sure that you have the background and the why of this, why it makes sense, right? So just some thoughts there. All right. So save the date. Our next session is going to be on Thursday, September 25th at 1 o'clock. It's always the 4th Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern. And if you have any topics you'd like us to cover, please let us know. Shoot out to your account executive or You Already Own It at go-planet.com. As always, we leave you with some links. Today, we just gave you the licensing tool matrix. If you've never seen it before, it's a really cool tool that Microsoft puts out there. That kind of gives you the capabilities to see mappings of the different license models that are out there and kind of lets you compare license types and see all the details behind those licenses and all the things that are included in your license. So we use it heavily here. I would suggest you take a look at it at some point in time if you're looking at trying to find out more information about your licensing. And then finally, we'd love to know how we did today. So if you could, I think Casey's going to put up this last poll for you. If you could let us know, 1, not useful at all, up to 2, very useful. I think it's a scale of 5, I think, if I remember correctly. If you could launch that poll, that'd be great, Casey. So today we've explored how M365 E5 G5 can significantly reduce costs by eliminating the need for costly third-party software. By leveraging E5, G5 comprehensive features, organizations can simply and streamline their technology management operations, enhance security, which will result in substantial cost savings, as you heard today. We hope this session has provided you with the knowledge and tools to make informed decisions about your cloud strategy. We encourage you to reach out to our cloud strategist and the You Already Own It program for further guidance and support. Last chance for questions. Otherwise, it's a wrap. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and especially Guy and Demetrius for presenting. We'll stay on for a couple minutes here in case there's any follow-up questions. Feel free to come off mute if you have a question.
I do have a question on the antivirus portion.
Sure.
Right now we do have CrowdStrike, and if we actually went to the E5 with the better Defender and got rid of CrowdStrike, how would that work in an environment where we have a lot of computers that are not necessarily owned or managed by a particular user because we use them for testing, test stations and things like that? Would that be a problem? Because we probably have about over 500 endpoints, but only about 260 licensed users.
Wow. Okay. So what are these endpoints used for then?
Like kiosk?
Like kiosk or training rooms or something like that?
Well, test stations, kiosks, things like that. A test station doesn't have a particular user because our tests can run for days or weeks. So you're going to have different users come in and use those test stations. And yes, and there's kiosks, and then there's equipment that comes in, third-party equipment that comes in, and they throw it on our system, and we have to throw CrowdStrike on it and basically secure it for us because we're a manufacturer and we have a lot of manufacturing equipment that has computers from third parties.
So would every time these machines be turned on, there seems like there's an actual user who would log on to that system and they would have their own license or not?
Yeah, not on all of them. Like the third party manufacturing equipment, they're for the robotics, I guess, without going into detail of what it actually is.
Okay.
And they just operate, and they got to be on the network because they're feeding inventory and test results and stuff like that. So they have to be tied into our databases.
Yep. So I think if you're looking to remove CrowdStrike for those types of machines, there's a per device license that you'd have to assign on the EDR side for the Defender side.
So we don't get, kind of like how it works with the Word and all that stuff, where you get 5 licenses per computer and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work that way necessarily.
If that's why I asked the question initially about would a user be able to log into that machine, then they could certainly use one of their 5 on that machine. And basically it's a rotation. So like when the 6th person gets on, it kicks off one of the others. So like you can certainly have, it's a different set of bits that you use for those users because it's like a shared computer, but you can use your current user licensing to do that if you can get a user to log on to that machine.
Yeah.
Otherwise you need to use the what Demetrius just mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was thinking about specifically a kiosk type of example, right? Or a LAN, as opposed to, hey, I may have, multiple machines that I access. If you have that 5 license, that 5 machine thing does, follow you. But it really depends. I wanted to make sure that, we address, because there is a difference between a kiosk type example versus multiple PCs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we have a combination of what we're talking about here with kiosk and ones that people don't log into. So I don't know the actual numbers, but we are stuck with that, extra challenge. It's just not always a user per computer, and that's it.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
You could do a mix of device and the shared users. Definitely. And that brings up another topic, by the way. If anyone's doing AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop, and Azure, the G5 licenses also provide you the ability to use those Windows OS and those M365 licenses up in the cloud as well as part of your user base. So there's no additional cost if you're doing AVD for M365. I'm not sure if people knew that or not.
Yeah, and when you think about it, the G5 license, the single user actually gets 15 licenses, 5 PCs or Macs, 5 phones, and there's another 5 5 tablets.
Tablets, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, one license for a user can have up to those 15 devices.
Excellent questions. Any other questions? We got about 1 minute left.
Thanks for that.
All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next month on the 25th of September. Have a great day.